I'm thrilled to introduce Nitin Natarajan, who's the Deputy Director of CISA, who will be sharing some remarks, and we'll take some few questions afterwards. So please help me welcome Deputy Director Natarajan.
Morning, everyone. Great to be here today with human beings, face to face, talking normally, having a conversation without fake book backgrounds and all sorts of stuff like that. Although it was insightful, I think, during the Zoom years to see people's homes and what their offices look like. No, it's great to be here today and talk about something I love talking about, which is CISA. And I think that, while I've been at CISA a little over a year now, I've had the opportunity to work with CISA for 15 years. I worked with them as a state and local partner. I worked with them as a federal interagency partner. I worked with them from the White House, and I had a chance to work with them from the private sector and be on kind of the partnership end of CISA. And now having the opportunity to come into this role and really look at where CISA's predecessors did very well, being able to continue those efforts and frankly be able to strengthen efforts in areas where we may not have done as good a job over the years as we want to. But it's great to be here today and talk about a little bit about CISA's posture, about where we are. We'll talk a little bit about obviously Russia, Ukraine, but also really talk about the partnerships and our stakeholder engagements and the things that we want to continue to do. So as we look at our priorities, CISA is really, not only is it a great organization, it's a great time to be at CISA. As a new federal agency, there's rarely a chance in the federal government to build your own bureaucracy, right? As opposed to adopting a bureaucracy from elsewhere. So we really have an opportunity to create an agency that we want, not an agency that we were given. We have an opportunity to look at things like acquisition and procurement the way we want it to be, not the way that it was given to us. We can look at our stakeholder engagements, our partnerships, the way we deal with all of our programs, and create the CISA that we want to create, the CISA that you all deserve, and the CISA that is going to meet the expectations not just of today, but of what we're going to see in the future. How do we do this within the lens of critical infrastructure? And to me, critical infrastructure is what people take for granted. You open your faucet, water comes out. You flip the switch, your lights come on. And rarely do people really think about what goes into that effort. Do people think about what goes into ensuring clean drinking water, what goes into ensuring that we can have electricity on the grid and across all of our sectors? And then really what goes into the protection from a cyber and a physical landscape to protect those capabilities and these vital systems. And then how do we work together? Government, industry, public-private partnerships, state, local, tribal, territorial partners, our international partners, to really increase our level of resilience that we need. Not just of companies here in the United States, but working with our partners globally, because we know it's a very interconnected world. We know that the risks and threats we face, especially in cyberspace, and all of you know this, is not domestic, it is international. So how do we make sure we're doing that effectively? How do we look at this as our vulnerabilities continue to increase? I kind of jokingly tell people, we connect refrigerators to the internet these days. I don't know why, mine isn't. I don't know what internet, if you have one, that's great. I'm not anti-internet connected refrigerator by any means. I'm just not sure what they do yet. But I think as we really build our capabilities, we build our technology, we're building vulnerabilities. Right, as we look at the transition into utilizing more industrial and control systems, increased use of OT technologies, we're introducing vulnerabilities. Now, it doesn't mean we shouldn't, right? I mean, we need to continue to evolve. We need to continue to transform as a nation. But we need to go into it eyes wide open. We need to go into it understanding the vulnerabilities and the risks that we're taking as we do this. To me, risk has always been a three-legged stool. We spend a lot of time looking at risk identification. We spend a lot of time looking at risk mitigation. What we forget is the third leg of that stool, which to me is risk acceptance. Because any risk that we identify and we don't mitigate, we're accepting. And often we want to forget about that. And we always accept risk, right? We're never in a completely risk-free technology. I could fall off the stage right now, right? There's a risk with being on an elevated platform. But we need to make sure that we're understanding and accepting the risks that we're dealing with. We need to look at our private-public partnerships and really transform from the partnership perspective to operational collaboration. And we've done this within CISA through the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative. I know folks have heard a little bit about that already today. But really transforming the dialogue to action. And how do we, not gauge success by meetings, but gauge success in how we are sharing operational information that's driving decision making. When it comes to information sharing, I've kind of developed a mantra over the years. And to me, information sharing at the end of the day comes down to how do we share the right information with the right people in a timely manner that results in more informed decision-making. The decision may be the same at the end of the day, but at least the decision is better informed by risks, by information, by threats, by vulnerabilities, by a whole spectrum of information. And we need to transform this landscape of just sharing to actually operationalizing it. I tell our folks all the time, at CISA, I would much rather publish 5 reports a year that drive action, that change behavior, that cause organizations around the country to do something, than to publish 1,000 reports just to say we published 1,000 reports. Right? So we really need to have that opportunity to look at how we can work closely together to drive operational change. And we're really excited about that. And I think as we look at the last year, I mean, I came in kind of on the mid-ish phase of SolarWinds, and it hasn't stopped. Right? I mean, I think we all have a list. There's a slide somewhere that has all the things that we've seen over the last 12 months. But obviously, whether it's Colonial Pipeline, JBS Foods, what we've seen at the state and local level, we've seen the healthcare cyber attacks, this has been something that we have continued to see and will continue to see. And we need to make sure that we're leaning as far forward with all of you to do that. As we look at the Russia-Ukraine issue, obviously we want to make sure that we're protecting the nation's critical infrastructure the best we can to be resilient against the potential for cyber incidents. As we've seen the president talk about, Russia may be exploring options for potential cyber attacks against the U.S. homeland. How do we make sure that we're leaning far forward on that? How do we make sure we have our shields up in preparation for that? And how do we do this in a way that doesn't result in fatigue? It's not easy to lean forward. It's not easy to lean forward for a prolonged period of time, and it's very easy to fall into fatigue when our teams are working at the pace that they're working at. But how do we maintain that vigilance over time? And we stand ready here at CISA to work with all of you to make sure that we can maintain that vigilance as we go forward. I want to highlight a couple of resources real quick, and I really want to save some time for some Q&A. But I want to flag our field personnel. Given that we have folks here from around the country, CISA has over 500 people in your communities throughout the country to help you. You know, I kind of jokingly say not every great idea comes out of the Beltway. There's kind of Beltway reality, and then there's reality, right? So we have folks out there in your communities, protective security advisors who look at physical security, cybersecurity advisors, chemical security inspectors, teams of folks out in the regions, in your communities throughout the nation to help you locally, to build a relationship with, to be the conduit into the federal government. You know, it's hard enough in the federal government sometimes to navigate the federal government. It's even harder when you're outside the federal government to try and navigate the federal government. So if you can build these relationships locally, these individuals can help navigate that for you, can help get you into and connect you with the resources, not just at CISA or at DHS, but with our interagency partners, whether it's our colleagues at the FBI or colleagues in the intelligence community. We can serve as that conduit in your communities to get the information out there and to connect you with the right folks. So what are we doing? So I mentioned Shields Up as our campaign to really make sure that folks are leaning forward and maintaining vigilance and a strong cybersecurity posture as we go into, as we're in this phase now, not going into, and how do we continue through this phase? How do we share information? And how do we share information, both very technical information geared at our cyber defenders, but also how do we share strategic information? How do we share information that is geared more towards the non-technical community? How do we share information that's geared towards CEOs and boards and senior elected officials so that they can understand what the true risks and threats and vulnerabilities are that they're seeing in their communities, that we're seeing across the nation or around the world, and being able to work closely with them to get that information out there? How do we share information about free cybersecurity services that are available and make sure that's in a single location that folks can resource? You know, when I was in local government, I had a motto: if it's free, it's for me. Because I never had the investment we needed to really strengthen our cyber efforts and our physical security efforts. So if there's resources out there, how do we make sure that people are aware that these exist and that they can tap into these? And really allowing people to find that in a single location, because I know often navigating federal websites can be a challenge as well. So we want to make sure we have that information out there. We've also updated things like our known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, our KEV catalog that we update regularly, and definitely encourage folks to keep an eye on that so we can essentially, again, provide guidance on mitigation efforts that can be taken across the board. So we really want to make sure that folks are aware of both the resources as well as the information that's out there. We have our Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, the JCDC, as folks heard about, and really excited about the work that they're doing. I think with Log4j, they were instrumental in helping us move forward. And we're continuing to evolve and mature that effort, and really utilizing the JCDC to benefit the nation and to benefit all of our efforts across CISA. During this time, though, the one thing I want to mention real quick is talking about reporting and incident information sharing. And to me, information sharing has to be a two-way street. And I've been on the other side. I spent years lobbying information to the federal government and feeling as if I got nothing back. And it makes you sit and pause and say, why am I doing this? Why am I giving all this information in if I'm not getting anything in return? And we want to make sure that we are providing that return on investment, the investment of your time, of your resources to share with us, that we're able to turn that around and share collectively back with you and with your colleagues across all the critical infrastructure sectors, and being able to do that effectively. The sooner we can get information, the sooner we can know what you're seeing, the sooner we can take that information and utilize it to more broadly protect your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, your families as we go across the nation. So it really is critical that we build this capability to have reporting in a timely manner. I kind of encourage folks all the time, I'd rather hear from you early and often. I'd rather hear from you often and it not be a huge issue than to wait days or weeks or months and then be looking in the rearview mirror. So call early, call often, and we want folks to engage actively with us. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the CyberPhysical Nexus. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about cybersecurity, and I'm a huge fan. There's a lot of work to be done in the area. But that cyber-physical nexus is also increasing. Again, if we look 15, 20 years ago, you know, there was little overlap in that Venn diagram. But as time goes on, as refrigerators come online and these other things we're seeing, that overlap in that Venn diagram is increasing, and it's only going to continue to increase. So how do we ensure that we are looking not just at resilience in the cyberspace, but resilience in the physical space as well? We need to use that to also transform how we think about risk and how we think about how we're going to protect our companies and our organizations. I remember 20 years ago or so-ish, when I was in the healthcare industry, and we'd always have this fight every year between our CIO and our CSO. I need more money this year. I need more money this year. I need guns, gates, and guards. I need servers that I don't know what they do, right? And we have these fights back and forth, and one year somebody would win, the other year somebody else would win. But at no point were we actually looking at this holistically across the organization. And we need to evolve the way we look at risk. We need to look at this from an enterprise perspective. We need to look at this at the CEO and the board level and at the senior elected levels to really look at understanding the risk and how do we best invest our limited resources across that spectrum. And the only way to do that is to really look at both the cyber and the physical nexus. And I'd like to remind folks, we are the cybersecurity agency, but we're also the infrastructure security agency, and really looking at bringing those together. And everybody has a role to play. Again, it's not public or private, it's not federal or state, local, tribal, territorial, it's everybody. And then it's also building that next generation of cyber defenders and of critical infrastructure protection experts that are coming into the workforce. You know, a lot of people tell me that the next generation is very cyber savvy. And I look at my kids that are finishing up high school and I think, I'm not sure how cyber savvy they are. They're very tech savvy, but are they truly cyber savvy, right? And if I go to an elementary school, am I seeing passwords taped on keyboards or not, right? And so I think there's a difference between tech savvy and cyber savvy. So how do we build people into being cyber savvy? And how do we do that and ingrain that from youth going all the way up through the workforce? Really, at the end of the day, you know, we need to be laser focused on resilience. We need to be raising the bar of resilience of where we are. And it's really going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us together. It's going to take all of us to play our parts to be successful here. And I'm looking forward to doing this with all of you as we go forward. So this is, you know, not the last time I'm going to hopefully have a chance to work with all of you, but looking forward to continuing that dialogue in the months and years to come, because again, it truly is a team sport. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm happy to take any questions that folks may have. So I think on both those fronts, we have promulgated some kind of initial guidance. I know we have a great relationship with the federal CIOs and the federal CISOs. I know Chris, I think left, but with Chris and his team and working with the Office of the National Cyber Director, So we do have some initial guidance out there. The Zero Trust Maturity Model is out and other guidance, but we need to further evolve it. We need to work with the departments and agencies to come up with what is the right level of protection and how do we implement that effectively. You know, the FCEB, the Federal Civilian Executive Branch, it's a wide open space, right? And I think that it's not, a lot of people perceive it to be, we just reach out to a bunch of CIOs, we say, do X, and it happens, right? But realistically, that's not the reality that we're in. So how do we make sure that we could talk about, collectively come to agreement where we need to go, what is the best way to get there, and then how do we invest to get there? You know, there's no magic checkbook in government, you know, so how do we make sure that we're resourcing these things effectively to get to success? Because again, if we're not resourcing efforts effectively, we can't get there from here. And the federal budget process is not a quick one. So how do we make sure that we can get the investments where we need them to be to really be on the forefront of that? And it's going to take some time, but it's going to take some prioritization and some commitment. And I think the one thing we do have right now with the team is strong commitment. I think we have a great team across the federal interagency that agrees the need to do this. We just got to figure out how best to get there collectively. And it's a partnership. It's not just about government doing this on its own. We need to do this with the right solutions, with the right partners to get to success.
Can you elaborate a little bit more in terms of what you see in the way of, you know, what that dialogue is that leads to actionable information sharing?
Sure. So I mean, to me, it's about really understanding what the true risks, vulnerabilities, and threats that folks are seeing. How do we make sure that the tools we're creating, the information that we're sharing is effective? Right, so one of the examples I used when I was in state government, CISA, our predecessor, called a bunch of us in a room, and they said, what do you want to know? Like, what intelligence do you want? I don't know what's out there. You know, I want to teleport coffee to my hand. I want to know exactly when I'm going to be attacked by, by a threat actor. I want to, so we literally spent an entire day throwing all this stuff up on the wall, and at the end of the day, I was told, oh, we can't do any of that. Thanks for coming. Successful meeting, this is great. And so, what we want to do is have the dialogue early, right? But really have it as an open dialogue to be able to say, what are you seeing? What do you need? How can we be helpful? How do we make sure that what we're creating is operational and truly helpful for that implementation? So I think as we talk about the dialogue with critical infrastructure owners and operators, it truly is that. And it's not just us assuming and lobbing things over the fence, but it's having the dialogue not once, but kind of repeatedly over time, recognizing that the volume of one-to-one conversations is limited by a 24-hour day and a 7-day work week. So how do we collect that information in an effective way, and how do we kind of iterate on these products and these conversations as we go forward? Hey,
Hi. When it comes to the JCDC, I know one of the things that CISA has said and that Secretary Alan Mayorkas has said is that small businesses is kind of the one area of preparation and resourcing where maybe the federal government can't be everywhere. They can't spread out and provide assistance to everyone. Is the JCDC an appropriate vehicle for that kind of engagement? I know that it's been kind of talked about as the place where the 25 biggest companies come to sit down with the government, but is there room for sort of the smaller businesses, or is that not necessarily the right vehicle?
So I think we want to continue. We've had good dialogue with small businesses. We're actually doing a lot of engagement with SBA and others as well, and a lot of local engagement, again, with our regional staff with small businesses. I think we have a lot of forums to collect information. I think what we want to do is utilize the JCDC to help the greater good, right? So to me, the issue is not getting everybody on the JCDC, and especially on a small business side where there just isn't the resources or the time to do so. But how do we ensure that the information flow is there so that the outputs of the JCDC are benefiting the greater good and organizations large and small? So that's what I kind of see the role in as we continue to grow the JCDC with intent and and scale it in a way that makes sense. How do we make sure that what is going in there from these entities are going out to a much broader community, right? So it's not that the outputs only go to those that are providing inputs. The outputs go out much broader. So it's our way to really leverage information to help small and large businesses throughout the nation. Yeah? Oh.
Hi.
So I can't really speak to amended executive orders or kind of what might be in discussion there, but I think part of this is iterative to me, right? It's what guidance is out there, where are we seeing progress, where are we not, and then what is the appropriate step to take beyond that to strengthen and shore up any gaps that may exist. So I think that we're looking at kind of the initial outputs of where we were from the EO activities are continuing. I mean, the first EO deliverables were due in like 3 minutes, I think, after the EO came out, it feels like. So we've been moving aggressively on that, and we just want to take some of the lessons learned and use that to guide our future actions.
Don McLean with DLT. I've seen guidance on zero trust from NSA, from DoD, from NIST, and from CISA, and I've read through them all. It was so much fun. And they're all kind of the same, but they're all kind of different. Is there any effort to put all of this guidance into a single, consolidated, consistent approach to zero trust across all of these agencies? I realize that's a tall order, but I think it would be very helpful.
I appreciate the feedback. I think that we do have a great relationship and collaboration with our partners, across all the agencies you mentioned. I think that the teams might be working on something, but I will say one of the things we're really pushing for at CISA, with everything we put out, is joint SEAL efforts. So one of the things that's our big push right now is we want to publish as many things as we can with our partner SEALs on the cover. To make sure we have that integration. If we're going to publish something about the water sector, we want to do it with APA. If we're going to publish something about the energy sector, we do it with DOE. How do we publish threat and vulnerability information with NSA and with FBI and others? Similarly with our colleagues at NIST when it comes to guidance. So I think that we've seen a lot, as you said, it's kind of similar information in the past, but where we're moving and what we're committed to doing is really having everything that we put out come out with a joint seal the best we can to make sure that all of our stakeholders are on board and we're speaking with a little bit more of a common voice. Because it is hard. It's hard on the receiving end to see 10 different things that are slightly different and where do we really kind of vector in on that.
Yeah, on the supply chain risk management, I know the folks at Fort Meade have programs for DoD stuff, but there's a zillion vendors that, the developers, they go to GitHub and they pull this library, pull that library. I know there's commercial applications out there that use crash dumps from the feedback to Russia and things like that. Is there any effort at CISA or DHS to go through those libraries and like, hey, developers for whatever program, this specific version of these libraries is good, doesn't have Russian or Chinese backdoors or go down things?
So I think that, to get to that level of kind of review and kind of thumbs up, thumbs down is just not where we are, frankly, equipped or able to get to, I think, from a scope and scale perspective. But what we really want to do is look at how do we change behavior? How do we put the right index of suspicion into what folks are doing? How do we get people to ask questions? When they're deciding software, when they start deciding hardware, when they're deciding, frankly, what they do day to day. I mean, in an ideal world, as I think about education and information sharing and how do we kind of really elevate the general knowledge base of cyber risk and cyber threats, I want people, when they choose something, right, whether it's an online service or what have you, or they're thinking, I want to choose one that has multi-factor authentication, right, or I want to choose I want to know where my software is coming from versus, going with the lowest bid. I want to know where my hardware is coming from and do the research and the investment to do some of that. So I think that, will CISA get to the point of being able to do it at that granular level? I'm not sure. But I think what we want to do is to start, because we can't wait, right? We can't wait until we build a capability or capacity to do X or Y. But how do we start getting people to start thinking about the questions they should be asking when making some of those decisions? Getting people to understand, again, their software, where it's coming from, their hardware, where it's coming from, and then what potential risks and vulnerabilities they're bringing on with that. And again, doesn't mean you don't do it, but at least you're going into it more risk-informed. Great. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of the conference.
Fantastic. Love seeing all the questions, and thank you, Deputy Director Natarajan, for those closing remarks.